Okay, welcome to Quantum Leap. We are live here and without any hiccups, we have a special guest from the UK today, Shola, who's a top keynote speaker on diversity and inclusion and a number of other things that she knows and does. And we're going to get to her in just a minute or two. I first wanted to introduce my esteemed co-host, Cory and I, and have him do a little check-in for the day.
Hey everyone, Cory Not here. This is Coach with Take Wing Coaching, and thank you, David. Everything's great. Just looking forward to the holiday and taking a couple of camping trips and keeping our marketing going for Take Wing and Lyft.
Okay, great. And yeah, I actually, want to just give a testimonial to some of the business stuff that I see going on in the United Kingdom. And, I think there's such a special partnership with the UK and the US, with the common language and the common market. And that might be a wild card question for us. I know, Cory, you have a lot of contacts in the UK as well. So I just think there's such a synergy in the innovation that they do. I remember in the music industry, I went over and visited in Sweden, and they said that they're really 10 years ahead in music over there. And I think a lot of areas and concepts, they are ahead of the US. And I think if you keep in touch with what's going on over there, you really see a lot of trends before they emerge here. And with that, I just wanted to give a little book recommendation that we started doing. I have Emerson, who's actually an American author. I'm not going to be able to, let me see if this is his essays. So
you got to put it right in front of you.
Okay, yeah. Can you see that? Oh, no.
Yeah.
Okay. So it is, okay, no. It's Emerson's essays. He's an American author, but check him out. It's not a business book, but it's really about thought and kind of everything in this world in terms of self-reliance, self-confidence. And, it's a book that's really a top 5 jewel in American literature and worldwide literature. And with that, we're going to get to Shola. Sorry for the long introduction and keeping you hanging there. We just wanted to welcome you to Quantum Leap from across the pond. And if you don't mind just telling us a little bit about your story and your background.
Absolutely. Really good to be with you, Cory and David. Definitely across the pond. It's pretty late here. It's like 9 p.m. And I think where you are, it's what, 1 or something. So yeah, feeling that time difference right now. But yeah, a little bit about my story. So I started out actually my career in the United States. So I was working for a company in the New Jersey area. And my first, the reason why I'm so interested in empathy in the workplace now is because I worked for a company in the States and also in the UK where perhaps it wasn't as empathetic as it could have been. And sometimes it's only later on that you realize, oh, something was missing. And for many years, I kind of internalized some of the things that had gone on. And then later on, discussing them, had someone say, well, do you realize that there wasn't a lot of empathy shown? And so for me, part of my drive as a speaker is to really to help people who perhaps are in tough work environments where they're not being perhaps understood or they're not included, and also to help those company cultures to open up and to be more understanding and more accepting of difference. So yeah, after I left the corporate world, I actually became a singer for a while, and I was a Motown and jazz singer for a number of years. And then sort of through the singing, kind of found my way back speaking and talking about communication, and to where I am now as a professional speaker.
Oh, great to hear. And I appreciate that little tidbit from your background. And I really think empathy and your focus, I saw you give a keynote presentation at a conference I was helping facilitate for SHRM. And really, I think empathy is really the antidote to a lot of what's wrong with this world and both the workplace, because, really the opposite is kind of narcissism and self-centeredness. And the more people can incorporate empathy into them and what they do in the workplace, that's really kind of the antidote to, I think, a lot of issues and some toxic cultures that we see and toxic behavior, be it business or politics. And if you don't mind just telling us about how you help with this in terms of how you bring some of these positive things, empathy, diversity, inclusion to the workplace. And that's a little bit of a broad question. We're just, I know you do a number of different things, but if you don't mind just sharing that with us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting that you say the opposite of empathy is narcissism, because I've not heard people actually just say it all in one sentence like that, boom. And I think that's, you're so on it there. And I was talking to somebody a while ago at a conference, and they were saying, well, it's great to have these frameworks for empathy, but some of our senior leaders are complete narcissists. And what do we do in that circumstance? And it can be hard when you've got people who are in that sort of narcissistic vein. How do you change them? So one of the things that I like to do as somebody who's kind of got a science background and likes communication is give people frameworks for a lot of the ideas that we're sharing. So empathy to a lot of people is quite a sort of amorphous, sort of fluffy thing that is very hard to break down. And a lot of people will use that as a get out of jail, like, I'm just not empathetic. There's nothing I can do. So I think one thing that's really important is to break it down into its constituent parts. So whether that's about having the curiosity to want to listen, and then having the listening skills to be open enough to understand, and then listening in a way that's not me too, because a lot of people think me too is empathy. And me too is not empathy. Me too is making it about yourself. Me too is what you say, narcissism, right? So, and how interesting that there's such a fine line, right? Oh, narcissist or empathetic, which one, right? Oh, I'm being empathetic, but you're not. So, so a lot of my work is around breaking down some of these topics into step-by-step frameworks that people can follow. So if you're a leader, I can have this conversation where, first of all, I try and understand what they're going through. Secondly, I empathize. Thirdly, I then try and not necessarily transform the situation, but at least say to them, well, what's next for you? What's next for you? Not, hey, I've got the solution, but what's next for you? So that's a little framework that I tend to use when I'm talking about empathy. And then, of course, when people feel empathized with, they feel that they belong, they can engage. And that's where the link between diversity, equity, and inclusion and empathy comes into it, right? So that's another area that I talk about. And I have, more traditional talks on things like microaggressions and sort of power and privilege and the like. And then, of course, communication and leadership are fundamental as well, right? Communication, because how do you create an empathetic culture if not through communication? And then leadership, how does this permeate the organization, the culture, unless it's through the leaders? So they all kind of tie together. It seems broad, but they all fit like a puzzle.
Great, well put. And I thought that SHRM conference was such a innovative conference in that it really focused on some of these emerging trends to where, I think right now we're seeing a lot of changes in the workplace in terms of the great resignation, as some are calling it, and these really challenges that COVID has put so much pressure on our workplace and kind of our legacy institutions. And some of them are breaking, and some we're seeing some of the issues, but we're going to have a renaissance or a reemergence in some cases. And I want to thank SHRM for their leadership in that. But I just wanted to see if you could tell us what you see as some of these key challenges in this COVID age, and how we might kind of weather this storm and really emerge as a stronger world and workplace, world of workplaces in the wake, so to speak.
Yeah, a good question. And I think, one of the things that I'm seeing people come to me for is saying, well, our corporate culture needs to change. We can no longer, with all that people have been through over the last 2 years now, we can no longer have this top-down command and control type of leadership anymore. It just doesn't work. It's almost like, that expression, like herding cats. Okay, they've worked from home. They've seen so much. They've experienced grief. They've experienced burnout. Their kids were home. So much has been going on, and yet they've still diligently attempted to get the job done and do their work. So then to expect people to sort of submit to that kind of imperialistic leadership, people are, no way, you know, I've had enough of this. And so whether that great resignation is fueled by people rethinking or wanting to move to workplaces that they enjoy more, or whether it's fueled by, which I think in part it is, women who, because their kids are, 1 minute they're off, they're back at work, you know, the kids are at school, they're home. It's very, very hard for many women to stay in their roles now. So a lot of that resignation is fueled by women just saying, hey, I need to stay at home and look after my kids. But with that, obviously the requirement to not lose that talent is for flexibility. It's for, as we talked about, empathy. It's for a style of leadership that is inclusive. It's for transparency. It's for just futurizing the workplace and treating people as adults rather than naughty children who need to be watched over, you know, the hours that they're at work. So that's the main thing that I'm seeing in terms of what people are coming to me for, but also I think what's the kind of workplace that we need for people to move forward. And it's funny, you were talking about sort of coming to Europe and Scandinavia and what you were seeing. And I was, before we got on this call, I was reading an article and it was talking about a bank, a UK bank called Atom Bank, and they've actually gone to a 4-day work week. And it wasn't even kind of trial. They just said, right, we're going to do this 4-day work week. Instead of 37.5 hours, everyone's going to work 34 hours. You'll work slightly longer days for those 4 days, but for your mental health, for your well-being, this is where we're going. And I know that a few companies in Iceland have done it before. So, you know, I do feel that some companies are really taking this on board and they truly are putting their employees' mental health first. And I think what the pioneer companies who want that top talent, who, you know, are at the forefront, they will start to look at this and they'll be thinking, hey, what can we do in this direction? So I think some exciting times are to come on the back of a lot of pain, unfortunately, but I think there'll be some innovation coming in the future.
Great. And I know there was a quote, I forget who said it, that, you know, politics is downstream of culture. So I think if we see, you know, some of this take hold culturally, and then it'll work slower into the workplace, and then we'll hopefully see that in politics at some point. And I did want to turn it over to Cory for his reaction and for the second part of the interview, and we'll follow up with a few wild card questions if we have time.
Yeah, I happen to agree. I've been very fortunate that I've worked for many companies that have been very flexible on time and just in general not being supervised. And it's always actually been just a much better environment to work in. Even in the 90s, I worked in project management firms where, you know, you were given the time and flexibility to do what you need to do. As long as it got done, it didn't really matter when it got done. I mean, within the deadline. And and people were just much happier with that. I was offered a job with Barclays Bank, oddly enough, and they actually had those kind of short hours. The pay was not great, but all the other benefits were really good. Like, hey, we just want you to be comfortable here and, you know, and be, you know, have a long, loyal employment with us. And I decided not to go with that, but it was definitely tempting given that it was a bank, that it was actually being that way. Not many banks, I imagine, are that way, or were. Anyway, so maybe you can tell us a little bit of the deeper why of what it is that you do, why it is that you do that.
Well, I sort of going a little bit more deeply into my story. I'm an introvert, and I sort of early on in my sort of first corporate role, literally I had a manager who was, whether he was afraid, whether he was too lazy to give feedback, I don't really know. But the first I knew that I was seriously underperforming in his eyes was when I was summoned to a meeting with the managing director of the entire company. And I thought, oh, perhaps they're giving me a mentor, perhaps they're going to give me some training. And in that meeting, I was put on probation. And I thought that was a classic fail in terms of this idea of giving continuous feedback, people always knowing where they stand, what they need to do next. That was the classic kind of anti that. And I stayed on at that company. It turned out okay. But then I had another incident. This was in the UK. The first company was in the States, where a similar sort of thing happened. Again, a manager that didn't give any feedback at all. Performance review comes around, Shola, this is your last day. You know, you pack your, I always sing, don't know if you know the song by Wham, Club Tropicana. There's a line, pack your bags and leave tonight. And I always think of that line, but I wasn't laughing and smiling at the time. I was actually very upset. But the point is, I noticed early on in my career, some of the things that were happening: poor communication, failure to give feedback, assumptions where people are ready to criticize rather than actually empathize or listen. And so that, a lot of that is the kind of foundation of what I talk about now. And I think having experienced it myself and then sharing it, people are much more inclined to say, yes, I've seen that happen, or something similar happened to me, but because I'm in full-time employment, I can't share that. Thank you for sharing that with us. And so that's kind of really the why, that I don't want anyone to kind of suffer, but, you know, to have a hard time in the way that I had a hard time early on.
Yeah, thank you for that. So as a world-renowned Republic speaker, what types of audiences and organizations would be a good match for retaining you as a public speaker?
Ooh. Oh, thank you for that question. A chance to market myself, I guess. Yeah, if I'm honest, I mean, I've been really blessed the last couple of years to work with companies from all sorts of different sectors. So everything from entertainment to luxury goods to a lot of tech companies, finance. And I think that empathy is such an important topic, and it can work in any industry. Even if you're looking at sort of retail, you know, you can look at the customer experience, looking at design thinking. Empathy comes into that. How do you create the best products? How can you be more innovative? So I'm not really answering your question, but I guess I'm saying that I really like the broadness of working with lots of different industries, but probably the majority of my clients are, I'd say, tech, and to some extent, yeah, tech is really the one.
Okay. And well, yeah, I think you just answered the last question, which is, who is your ideal client? Kind of, it's the same thing, right? I mean, is it large tech companies? Is it small ones? Is it tech conferences? What would you say would be a good fit for you?
Yeah, most of my clients have been companies, I have to admit. In the UK, the sort of association market is very different than in the United States. So we don't have the same size conference this as well funded as you do there. So you know, I'd certainly like to speak at more big conferences in the United States, but of course there's not so much travel happening still at the moment. But yeah, it's mainly tech companies, big and small, and I like working with small companies. They can be quite nimble, fleet of foot, things happen quickly. But big companies, you have a chance to affect the lives of many people. So it's all good.
And I know what we were also getting at beyond your public speaking. Are there any other kind of consulting or other projects that you work on that might be an ideal client out there for you?
Again, thank you for these questions. I have done some consulting work, and I do enjoy that. I must admit, what really touches my heart is working with groups. And as an introvert, people say, well, surely you prefer working one-on-one, but there's just an efficiency, I think, also when you're working with many people. And so whether that's a senior leadership session with 10, 12 people, whether it's a company keynote with 2,000 or 3,000, groups are for me, where it's at. And I absolutely love working remotely as well, because I feel like when you have that chat box open, you can read people's real-time comments while you're speaking. And there's just that feedback loop, which is not the same as when you're in a room with somebody and you're having to look at their eyebrow twitching, or, you know, try and interpret these small movements. And are they enjoying it? Is this hitting the mark? Versus virtually, hey, what do you think of this? And you suddenly get a stream of comments back. So I love speaking face to face, but I also think virtual is just an amazing opportunity that I don't want to lose, even after things get further back to normal.
Great. And we have about 5 more minutes on time, so I'm going to spring a wild card question on you, as we call it. You know, that SHRM conference, we noted some of the emerging trends or speakers that spoke to some things. I just wanted to see if there was anything in that conference or anything you're seeing out there in books or other speakers that is really an emerging trend or a way that we're changing the way we do business that employers might want to look at or consider.
Mm. You know what? If I'm perfectly honest, the sessions I went to are ones that I tended to have a personal interest in. So in terms of spotting trends overall, I'm probably not the best person for that. You need a futurist on your show next, David. That's what you need.
Okay, no problem. I know your trend, the things that you're interested in are the cutting edge, so to speak. I was just curious if there was anything else out there that we might want to keep our eye on, but I appreciate you deferring to a futurist, which would be, we got some of them down in Silicon Valley, so we'll look forward to to trying to find one. Cory, do you have any reaction to that or any comments on the interview thus far?
No, that's it.
Okay, great. Well, good. Well,
Yeah.
I think we might keep it short and sweet today. If you have any seminars or things coming up, Shola, that you want to promote, either books or speeches or master classes, we'd love to know those, and feel free to send me the links. I can put those in the comments. Otherwise, we'll want to thank you for coming on, and we look forward to continuing to follow you and check in, and hopefully seeing you live sometime if you ever come to here in the Bay Area or California to see you in action.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I think I might be in the California area next quarter. We're still talking about it, so I shall definitely look you up if that's the case.
Yeah, please do. We'd love to see you. And so great to hear your story and everything that you're into. So with that, we'll close out Quantum Leap with Shola Kaye. And thanks for listening, everyone.